Apologies for the delay. Welcome. Hope everyone's having a great Thursday so far. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to our Montessori Town Halls. We host these every single Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern as a space for Montessori leaders to come together. We discuss important leadership topics. Sometimes we offer workshops or we give marketing advice as well. Other times we invite different Montessori leaders, coaches, mentors to come and share their expertise to other Montessori leaders. We always make these calls free. Anyone can join, so feel free to invite a fellow Montessorian, the more the merrier. It's also a space for you guys to share ideas, ask questions, and support one another in the Montessori space. Today, we're going to talk about creating the perfect parent handbook for Montessori schools. Now, I'm assuming most of you already have a really nicely put together parent handbook. I hope that you can take away some new ideas and maybe share some ideas to the other people who have joined this call. I think it's great to kind of compare and contrast and see what works well for your community. Obviously, every single Montessori school will have a unique parent handbook, something that works for their own community and describes their own policies. But I just thought this would be a helpful call. And also throughout the call, feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself if you have any questions or concerns. We're happy to hear your ideas as well. So this is very much a collaborative space and workshop. All right, just a brief overview about everything we'll be discussing today. I'll be talking about, what the ultimate purpose of a parent handbook is in your community, some information on a great design and layout, what should be included in your handbook, touching on Montessori philosophy, making your handbook a resource, accessibility, how you should share your handbook, resources that you can also use and share with families. And then we'll have some time for discussions, questions, and idea exchange towards the end of this meeting. So hopefully that helps as well. First, I'd love to get to know one another here on this call. If you could drop in the chat where you're joining us from, when was the last time your school may have updated your parent handbook? Is this something you do annually or even more frequently? And why did you join today's call? Was it to get some ideas? Was it to compare for your own handbook, or are you a school that's just starting out and looking for kind of a template of sort to build a great parent handbook? So I'll pause a moment, everyone can share. Joining from Missouri, welcome. We update ours as needed, wanted to get other ideas. Great, Wally. Joining from Pittsburgh, great. We've got some people from all over. And I know some people will watch the recording of this as well. We have very busy schedules as school leaders. We're joining from Houston. Hi, Chase. I know Chase because she's from Northwood. Updates hers annually. Also another one from Knoxville, Tennessee, updates annually, looking at ways to streamline and make more readable. Looking to revamp our handbooks. Okay. Joining from Arkansas, we update every year, start in January and have it finalized by summer. Joining to get any ideas as we're in the process of editing right now. Awesome. We update our handbook annually and just wanted some fresh ideas. I'm in South Africa. Wow. Last updated last year. Enjoy hearing others' ideas. Well, good evening for you then. All right, awesome. Well, welcome. Hopefully you'll take away some new ideas and just get some inspiration, and feel free to share throughout the meeting if you have anything to add, because we love to hear your ideas. So just, to get started, a parent handbook has a purpose. It should really answer all the parents' questions about your policies, rules, procedures, and outline your approach to childcare. Handbooks must be well-structured, comprehensive, and updated regularly. Basically, it should always, what we mean by updated regularly is if anything changes, as we've seen in the last few years, it should be updated to kind of reflect the tone of today, any changes that are made in your school community. Comprehensive means it should be detailed, it should be clear, it should be easy to read, and it should have every bit of information that parents might need to know. And well-structured, meaning that the information should be organized in a way that's approachable and that parents can access what they need to immediately and easily. So ultimately, your handbook does have a goal. It can help you write out your policies and philosophies. So not only your school rules, but also your philosophy as a Montessori school. Set parent expectations, set your expectations of families as well. Make your mission very clear to families. It will also help you break down operations and processes, and communicate the boundaries and rules of your community. It also helps to set the tone, and every Montessori will have a different and unique tone. All right, so when it comes to design and layout, ultimately your handbook is a communication tool. And communication, we always like to think of things from a visually appealing standpoint. It should be segmented, it should be well organized, the information should be purposeful, the copywriting should be very strong. All of this is important to consider. Things that make your parent handbook more concise and approachable are breaking information down, creating sections. You don't necessarily have to create chapters unless you have a very lengthy handbook, but sections really help. It helps parents kind of access what they need to quickly. Use approachable language. We speak Montessorian every day in our schools. We understand our language because we use it every day, but to some parents who are new to Montessori, it might be foreign language sometimes, especially the terminology that we use, at least until they get settled into our community. So all the language that we use in our handbooks should be explained. It should be easy to approach, easy to read. It's important to include a table of contents. Parents don't want to sit and read through a lengthy handbook when they have a question to read. While we do recommend, I'm sure as a school community, we do recommend that our parents read through our handbooks. Sometimes throughout the year, they might have a specific question or might be wondering about something, and they should be able to access that easily. A table of content helps with that. Number your pages. This will help with your table of contents, of course. Use titles and subheadings so that parents can access information easily. Make the subheadings a different color or different size so that it's easy to pick out and segment all the information that you're including in your handbook. Include infographics and charts when appropriate. Charts really help parents kind of remember information and see it in a more simple way. It also just helps us because it's easier for us to explain and break things down using infographics sometimes. For instance, when we have our daily schedule breakdown, information about, what supplies are needed, things like that. Infographics checklists, all of this can help make that information much more easy for parents to read through. Avoid long walls of texts if you can. Parents shouldn't have to dig to find the answers to their questions. We always say this in communication. Nobody wants to see a big, giant, just page full of text with no subheadings, no bullet points. It helps to break things down. Obviously, you're sharing a lot of information to parents through your handbook, but you can kind of design it and lay it out in a way that is going to be a little bit more approachable. Any other questions or tips when it comes to a good design or layout? You don't necessarily need to include a bunch of pictures in your parent handbook. The purpose of it is information, but infographics, subheadings, all of this can be helpful.
Mila?
Yes, Wally?
What do you think of adding a section called frequently asked questions?
Yes, I actually have that I have a slide all about that. I do recommend parents include this in the parent handbook. Yes. All right. So breaking down information, this is where what I like to call our sections are. This is after comparing several different Montessori handbooks from several schools. We also have one in our own Montessori Thrive collection that you can access if you want a comparison. But really creating sections in your Montessori handbook is what's going to make that information so much more approachable to families. And these are the sections that we ultimately came up with. Of course, every school community is going to have a different way of laying out their handbook. And that's okay. Every school is unique. These are the sections that we recommend. First and foremost, starting out with a getting to know our school, Montessori philosophy, family agreements, school calendar, our policies and procedures, operations as well, that all goes together, frequently asked questions, and parent resources. We think that this is really what a great parent handbook would consist of. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as to what to include in each of these sections. All right, so let's talk about now what to include in each of those sections. And remember, every handbook is different. It's important to create your own voice, to create one in your own voice. Every school will have a different tone, a different way of writing things. So just keep that in mind. Not everything has to be word for word how it is in this in the sample. All right, so section 1, getting to know our school. Let's talk about what this would consist of. So I think it's very important to set the tone in your parent handbook by starting out with your vision and mission statement. So this is after your title page. Maybe you have a welcome letter, you have your table of contents, and then you'd have this right after that. So you start with your vision and mission statement as the big part of your parent handbook. Introduce your community and your values. Every school has different values. You can discuss your goals as a community. You can include a brief history of your school and why your doors opened. If you have a nice story about, maybe it was a group of parents who opened the school. I know a lot of Montessori start that way. Share your story and let families know what your community is really about and what you set out to do as a school. I think this is important. Then you move on to a core value statement sample. This is just a sample that we have taken from the sample parent handbook we have in our collection of what a core value statement can be. See how we've broken it down in bullet points. We've made it really easy to digest for these parents. Starting out with, we view education as a cooperative endeavor between our children, staff, and our parent body. We emphasize the importance of fostering values and aspects of character. These include. This just allows parents to kind of read through what your school values, how you carry yourself, what your beliefs are. And I think this is important because they're agreeing to be a part of this community. So it's important for them to understand what's valued there. Feel free to use this for your own handbook. We'll be sharing a copy of this presentation in our collection as well for those of you who want to take some of these ideas. This will also be available on YouTube if you want to look at the slides later. I think in this section, it's also important to add a non-discriminatory policy. Non-discrimination is important to just talk about, especially as it should be a part of every school's core value at this point. Here's just a brief sample of ours. It doesn't have to be that long. Ours is about a paragraph long in the sample handbook that we offer. But it just allows you to, again, set the tone and talk about what type of community you are. I think it's important. I know a lot of Montessori schools are always looking for ways to become more diverse. I think having this in your parent handbook definitely will help you do that. And it'll help you speak to your community saying that, everyone is welcome here. So I think it's important to add this as part of not necessarily your mission, but you can include it in this section of the book. Did I leave anything out? Questions, comments, ideas? That was just what I think should be included in terms of getting to know your school. So those parents can always have that in the parent handbook and they can reference it and just get a feel for your school's values. All right, we'll move on to section 2, which is all about Montessori philosophy. Unlike traditional schools, we have to really constantly be in a state of educating families about the unique benefits of Montessori. So this means it's important to include a section about Montessori philosophy in your parent handbook, just so parents are really clear about, how your school works. It's not like traditional school. It's not like a daycare. It's different. So I think it's important to outline Montessori philosophy, what Montessori philosophy entails and what parents can expect. I think managing expectations is a big kind of theme of your parent handbook. It allows parents to understand what you're doing day to day at your school, what your aim and goals are. Include some background information on Montessori. You can include a brief history. You can talk a little bit about Maria Montessori. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a whole research paper, but just give a brief introduction. If you're an accredited school, whether it's AMI, AMS, or another accreditation, it's important to talk about that as well, as that's a huge part of your school and what your curriculum entails. I think it's also important to give a little bit of insight about your curriculum and what families can expect. You can discuss about, every material in the classroom is purposeful. You can talk a little bit about various elements of Montessori philosophy and break that down for families. Again, hopefully once parents have enrolled, they would have already gone through a school tour. They would have already gotten a little bit of an introduction to Montessori philosophy, but it never hurts to include this in your parent handbook, just so it's there in black and white and they can reference it throughout their time with you. This is where a philosophical agreement can also tie in really well. We do actually recommend that schools have families sign a philosophical agreement during the enrollment process, but you can include a copy of the philosophical agreement that they've already signed as part of your parent handbook. So you can just include, just a reminder, this is a philosophical agreement that every family signed when they enrolled at our school. We actually have a copy of this in our Montessori Thrive collection if you're looking for a template or one to use. But basically, it just outlines, what Montessori is, what education looks like in the Montessori space, and what parents are agreeing to in the classroom, and that they're also looking to partner up with your school in order to build a strong educational foundation for their child. I think by signing this, obviously it may not be, an official contract. This is more of an agreement of ideas saying that, oh, yep, we agree to participate in raising our child the Montessori way and working with the school in order to achieve, similar messaging at home and things like that. So this can help you kind of get that message across, and just include it in your parent handbook so those parents can always reference it. Section 3, family agreement. So this is kind of going beyond just philosophy. This is what is expected of families in your community. And I think this is important to include in the parent handbook, because I think a lot of us as Montessori schools, we want our families to be involved and engaged. We're not really schools that are built on, oh, your parents come, drop their kids off, they're gone for 8 hours, they come pick up their child, and that's that. We aim to build a relationship to help parents, to educate families. So it helps to have things like this in your parent handbook, because it makes those expectations very clear, and they can always reference this information as needed. So again, yes, this section will allow you to clarify to those families that they're entering a partnership. I think using the word partnership often in this section, particularly of the handbook, is really going to be beneficial, because when you're having those challenges with families who are not involved or working against the school, you can always remind them like, oh, in our parent handbook, we always like to outline everything that's expected. We really believe in a partnership with our families. We think that the children benefit so much more when parent and school partner and work together. Setting expectations is important. And since you're giving parents a parent handbook pretty much from the second that they enroll, you can set the tone from the very start. So you can start out with a little section about, what does our school expect from parents? So what are our expectations of the families that we choose to work with? You can talk about family involvement, how parents should communicate with the school. So if you have open office hours, if you have a contact number, you can say, we don't really like parents contacting teachers on their personal time, or maybe you have a certain rule about it. You can explain all of these things in this section. Again, every school is unique. Every school is different. Maybe you want that accessibility. Maybe you have some type of classroom management communication tool that you use. All of this you can address here. Again, how families should interact with one another. How parents should strive to parent with Montessori principles at home. All of this, even though you've already kind of mentioned it a little bit in the philosophical agreement, it's great to readdress and just make that into bullet points and make it really clear, this is what we expect from families in our community. If you have anything that you kind of include like this in your parent handbook and you have expectations from your families, I'd love to hear what you share. If you have a section like this in your parent handbook, feel free to drop it in the chat. Always looking for new ideas. It'll definitely be helpful to other schools. And I think that setting these expectations early on in something like a parent handbook will help you solve conflicts later on when they arise, if they do. I think also it's just going to help you avoid conflicts if you're very clear about what you expect from families. Any ideas, comments, questions? Right. On the other hand, it's also important to let families know what they can expect from you. This also helps manage expectations. I think a lot of parents are excited to sign up for Montessori. They've heard such great things about it. I see something here coming in the chat. We ask parents to sign a partnership agreement that outline expectations on both sides. both sides. And I think we have this resource in the Thrive collection as well. So if someone's looking for this type of partnership agreement, it's available in Montessori Thrive if you want the template. You can easily edit it to fit your own school. I see here. Would this be where parent association is mentioned if the school has one? You can. It's all dependent on the layout. I have that sectioned later on in this format, but you're welcome to include it in whatever section that you do. But I think it's important to definitely mention any type of parent association information or any type of volunteering opportunities, things like that, in your parent handbook. So following, what you expect from families, you can explain what families can expect from you. If you're accredited, you can talk about this is what our accreditation entails. This is what you can expect from a AMI or AMS accredited school. How often do you train your staff? Does your accreditation require you to go to annual refresher courses? Things like this. You can always mention this. What's required of the staff. Things like school hours are important to be clear about. Communication, how should parents expect the school to communicate with them about special events, things like that. How often will parents hear from the school? Observations, parents can come in for observations so they can see any progress, they can ask questions. Conferences so that parents can ask, questions, discuss with teachers, how those things are set up. Things like support, what support is built into the school for families to help with parenting, to help with any challenges that may arise, all of this. If I missed anything, feel free to comment in the chat. But it's good to just list all of these things out, and it really helps to create a bullet point or a checklist on your own end, and then just think of every single expectation that a family would have of your school, and then just write in detail what they can expect of each thing. I think this really helps, again, set the tone and manage expectations. And then if a problem does arise, like, oh, I feel like the school doesn't communicate enough with us, you can talk to them. You can be like, oh, okay, well, here in our handbook, we send our weekly newsletter. We have our SMS text reminders. How else can we support you? So you can kind of reference it in the parent handbook. Things like this are really helpful for those conversations. So it's good to just include as much as possible. Again, some parents will be more particular than others. So I think this is another important thing you can include in this section of the handbook, and that's a parent code of conduct. We also have a copy of this in Montessori Thrive if you're looking for one. But it can really be a page about how you expect parents to conduct themselves in your community. I don't know, but a lot of schools have had those parents who, they're very demanding. They have very high expectations. They may not treat our staff with the respect that they deserve, and that can cause a lot of issues. That's why it's important to include a code of conduct that you can then reference when these problems arise and be like, oh, well, it's in our parent handbook. This is how we expect parents to conduct themselves in our community. We don't use that type of language. We don't talk to our teachers that way. If there's disagreements, we have meetings about it. So you can outline all of this in this section of the handbook. Things like how parents should treat staff, what behavior won't be tolerated, what language is not allowed, or how people should talk to one another in your community, how parents can engage with the community, and how does the school move forward if there's conflicts, whether it's between parents, between staff and parents, between students and teachers. How does the school move forward with conflicts? This is here's that question. Parent involvement and volunteer opportunities. Again, this is another thing that you're clarifying with family expectations. If your school offers volunteer opportunities or has a parent committee, a parent association, you can discuss it in this part of the handbook. You can talk about how parents can get involved, ways that they can help. You can talk about fundraising. Even if parents may not have the time to volunteer, you can talk about how they can give or donate funds to your school. You can talk about how they can help with sponsorships maybe as well. You never know, a parent might be a small business owner that's willing to help sponsor a Montessori school. All of these things can be helpful. So you can include this in the parent handbook. You can also include a list of sponsors that you may have already. And I know sometimes some of these small businesses might even offer discounts to families that go to the school. So all of this is stuff that you can include in the parent handbook so they can reference. Camille says also how parents should conduct themselves when participating in a field trip or going out. Yep, that's important to include in the code of conduct. All of these things if you're offering field trips or trips or anything like that. Yeah, but having a section about parent involvement and volunteer opportunities is helpful. I know you can also talk a little bit about if you have a board, you can talk about how that works in this section as well. You know, that way parents understand every decision-making process that your school makes goes through a board. It's not just because the administrator decided it. There's a committee and everything. So any questions on kind of the parent family expectations section of the parent handbook? Did I miss anything? I'd love to hear your ideas, comments, questions. All right, well, section 4 is the school calendar, and I think every parent handbook should have a school calendar because this is usually what we find ourselves repeating time and time again, especially when parents forget that we have an in-service day or there's a day off. It's important to have this and just always let parents know that they can easily access the school calendar. Yes, you'll need to update this every year. I think it's just important to have a school calendar on your website that's easily accessible, on your parent handbook, in your newsletter. All of these things are important. You could include all information about school hours and closures. Also, if there's any kind of like late pickup policies, you can remind parents about this in the school calendar, just so that they're aware and they're respectful of your hours. Our teachers and ourselves, we have families and homes to get to as well. So it's important to be very clear about your time. I think it also helps, especially for those younger children, but really for all age groups, a daily and weekly breakdown. So kind of an hourly breakdown of how each day works. This way parents know, oh, this is what happens. There is purposeful learning going on every day. This is not just a daycare. You know, they have these 3-hour uninterrupted work cycles. They have a snack time, they have lunchtime, and they can see that. And also so that they can also work with those routines at home, because we know that especially young children thrive off of routine and regularity. So all of these things are important to include. You can use an infographic here to talk about your hourly schedule. What does the week look like? Do you have special days? Maybe on Thursdays, you have like a music hour or something like that. You can include this. Meal times, nap times. Again, use charts and infographics here as much as you can. This helps the information be so much more digestible. And also parents can just print this out and stick it on their fridge if it's like in a chart form. That way they know, oh, today, you know, my daughter has this at 3 o'clock. She's going to have her music class, and maybe she's excited about that. Again, this is just things that parents like to know.
Mila, this is Wally. I have a question about the calendar.
Yep, sure.
Do you mean to have a calendar for like a daily schedule, or are you talking about the whole year?
I mean, obviously, you know, every week is going to look slightly different, but I think it helps to first have your annual calendar, so month per month, so that parents can see all the days off. And maybe there's a half day in there, or if there's an event, they can just see it kind of laid out by month calendar, and then what a week looks like. So maybe you can do kind of like how they have it here. It would be a chart where it's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. depending on your school hours. And you can talk about, okay, at 8 a.m. every day, that's carpool. Carpool closes at 8:10. And you can break this down so that parents can just know kind of what each hour is. They can know when snack time is every day. They can see, oh, on Thursdays at 2 o'clock, they have a music hour to end the day, just so that they can prepare and they know. Obviously, every week might be different. I think it helps to have one of each month of the school year, and then just what a whole week looks like hour per hour on a chart form. You can use Excel for this. There's also lots of templates on Word that can be helpful for this. It's not too tricky to create.
We don't use calendar in the handbook, but we do have, for example, when students register at the school, we provide them the calendar. We have it on the website. Mm-hmm. Once, what we find is that occasionally we might have to tweak the calendar over the year, and so each time that then have to update the handbook and then send it to them again. So that's the reason we have avoided doing that.
Yeah, and
I was just going to say, yeah, Wally, I would recommend actually probably having the calendar separate from the handbook and just maybe like, you know, including it because handbooks can get pretty thick, and if you're printing them, they're expensive to print. So
Yeah.
if you have the calendar on a sheet, just tuck it in the handbook, and then it can easily be replaced every year, and you might not need to reprint your handbook every year. So that's how I would approach it. I mean, it would be great if you do, if you only publish it online, you provide a PDF, then it's easy to update it and just send the parents the PDF. But if you're actually physically printing it, I wouldn't actually put the calendar printed in the handbook.
Yeah, ours is a PDF electronic.
Your handbook is a PDF?
Yes, we don't actually physically print it and give it to the, because that'll be very expensive.
Yeah. Then you can just have your
Yeah.
calendar right in there, and you just update it, and every year.
Yeah, by not having it in the handbook, what happens anytime a calendar changes, we just kind of email them the calendar itself. That's it, right? But anyway, that's how we've been doing it.
That works too. Yeah, that works too.
Here, Danielle in the comments has said, we have ours on Transparent Classroom. We also have Google Calendar, and parents can sync that with their online calendar, which is great. And they also have a paper copy. I think also just having it on your school website is easy because parents can access it whenever, and they can look at it throughout the year. So I think it's important to make it as accessible as possible for parents to reference, because they're forgetful and they might not always get our email reminders about an in-service day or things like this. So yeah, whatever works for your community. All right, next section. This is probably going to be the bulk of your parent handbook and kind of the meat of it, which is your policies and procedures. And this is where it's really important to be as detailed as possible with all of your school policies. So it's important to clearly outline every single policy your school has, even ones, just talk about everything, honestly, here. Make sure every detail is covered and use this as a reference throughout the year, and make sure that parents know to keep the handbook for this reason. And update it and check it regularly. Our policies change. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that policies are constantly changing. So make sure this is updated at least annually. It doesn't need to be changed annually, but just looked over, revised and edited. All right. I think it's important to talk about the application process in your parent handbook. I think even though most parents would have already gone through, all parents would have already gone through this process, it's important to address it just so that parents can understand how it worked, and maybe they have a younger child they'd like to apply for as well. And it's just important to share this information. I know all of the handbooks that I looked at online, most of them would have a brief section about the application process. Just remind families of the process from start to finish. How does application work for siblings? Because, maybe they have a younger child that they'd also like to enroll, younger sister or brother. And how does re-enrollment work? So do you have rolling re-enrollment at your school? What is the process? Is there deadlines? All of this you can talk about in the application section of your handbook. Next is payment policies. Be very detailed in this section. Explain every single policy that you have regarding payments, tuition, and financing at your school. Make sure to list out every fee. Talk about tuition discounts if you have any. Maybe your parents get a discount if they pay the whole year up front. Anything like this you can discuss. How and when tuition should be paid. Do you accept checks? Where should they be turned in? By what day are they due? What happens if they aren't paid on time? Are there late fees? And how the school takes action when tuition is not submitted. So let's say a parent hasn't paid tuition in 3 months and you need to take action, and that child can no longer attend classes. So all of these things you need to outline and explain. If you have any financial aid or scholarship information as well, you can include it in your payment policy and how that works, and how that impacts the payment policies that you have in action. This is probably the section that's going to take the longest time, just because you want to make sure that parents are really clear about how tuition works at your school. Even though you would have discussed this in the enrollment process, it's just good to have everything there in black and white. Withdrawal information. I think it's important to include a section on this as well. What do parents need to know about withdrawing their child? You know, a lot of times we only allow withdrawals if a family is moving, you know, or if there's like a big issue. How much notice do families need to give? Obviously, there's going to be different scenarios where families just want to pull their kids out immediately. But on your end, what would be the ideal situation? Is there a fee for withdrawal? What is the process? You can also talk about, do parents get refunds? Is that something that your school does? Or when a parent pays the semester, that means they pay it and they don't get it back. What does that mean for their deposit? All of this you can address in the withdrawal section. Vacation and absences. I think it's really important to be very clear here. Montessori is not a daycare, so attendance is important. This isn't just, you know, oh, well, you're going to go on a 2-week-long vacation in the middle of October when we're in session, and you're not going to pay for that. Nope, that's not how it works in Montessori necessarily. So it's important to be clear about that and set those expectations. You know, this is a school, we expect the children to come in. So you can talk about how many absences are permitted. You know, obviously their children get sick, they have to go to the doctor sometimes. That's completely acceptable. Do you make parents bring in doctor's notes, things like this? You can all address here. How is attendance taken? Do you have an app? Do you use I know some people will use Brightwheel, things like this in order to take attendance and keep track of that every day. How does absence impact the tuition? I know some parents, sometimes they think, oh, well, it's, you know, it's pre-K. If I don't go for a week, I don't pay for that week. Well, that's not how it may work in a Montessori program. So it's important to let parents know that just because your child doesn't show up doesn't mean that you won't be paying tuition. Again, be clear on that. Should families take vacation during the school year? You can talk about this, address it, be like, oh, we recommend that our families try to take vacation when school is not in session. The reason why is because we really feel it's important for the children to be in the classrooms and have that consistency. And you can explain as to how the children really benefit being in the classroom every day. So again, this helps with the managing of expectations that we're ultimately trying to do with the parent handbook. Pickup and carpool, make sure to outline every single policy when it comes to your pickup and carpool. Talk about how carpool works, you know, talk about everything, where parents should wait for carpool, what time does it start, is there parent parking, do parents need to fill out pickup permission slips if they have a babysitter or a grandmother coming to pick up their child. How does the release of children work? How does early pickup work if a child has a doctor's appointment that the parent needs to come in for? Are parents allowed in the classroom during drop-off? I know this is a big issue because we have a lot of those long, dragged out goodbyes. Sometimes it can be really disrupting to the morning routine. So you can address this here in the pickup and carpool section. And again, you have special cases. Sometimes it might be beneficial to have the parent as part of that morning routine, but you could address why, you know, you don't recommend that parents come into the classroom to tell their child goodbye. What parents should do if they're running late, you know, how should they notify the school? Are there late fees associated with picking up their child late? Things like this, you can all address in the pickup and carpool. Be very detailed here. It just avoids any problems in the future. Health and safety. I think this is probably the section that we've focused on the most in the past few years, and it's been the most changing one. This is just a section that we're really focused on ensuring a safe and healthy environment. It also helps protect the school in many ways. So it's important to be detailed and purposeful in this section. You can include information about children's health forms, include checklists here, you know. Even though a parent would have already submitted it, it's important for them to reference the checklist later so they know, oh, this is all the information I've submitted to the school already before classes started. Illness guidelines, you know, when you should not bring your child into the classroom. This has obviously changed with COVID and COVID symptoms, but, you know, when a child has a fever, absolutely don't bring them in. If a child is ill throughout the day, how will that work? How will parents be contacted? Will they be expected to come pick up their child? Where will the child have to sit? If throughout the day they develop a fever, obviously they can't be with other children. All of this you can outline. Immunization requirements, vaccines, etc. Giving medication. Obviously, you need special permission to give medication. So you can talk about that here. Hand washing. This is just probably something that a lot of schools have added post-COVID. Clothing, extra clothing and toilet training information. Rest time procedures. Healthy food policy. This is a one that one of our schools actually requested in our resource exchange a while back, and I think it should really be included in your parent handbook. What foods are allowed at your school? Are you a school that permits parents to pack anything for lunch, or are you really against processed, foods, refined sugars in those children's meal? You can give ideas as to why you support healthy diets in your school. You can talk about you can include charts, meal ideas, things like that. All of this is helpful for families so they understand, there's no junk food allowed at school. It also helps it helps any disruptions, because when a child is eating a healthy meal and then their friend is eating a cupcake and then their friend shares a cupcake and the mom doesn't want them to have a cupcake, it just causes problems. So you can explain all of this in your healthy food policy. Allergy forms, how parents can notify schools about allergens, how the school deals with allergens. All of this is important. Things like EpiPens. Obviously, this goes in as well with the giving medication, but all of this is important for parents to understand how this works in a classroom space. Bathrooms, how's the bathroom situation at your school? How will children be using the bathroom? Things like this. Pandemic plan. This is probably something that you have all added to your parent handbook in the recent years, but how the school kind of deals with the pandemic. Do you go with your local school district's advice? What have you learned from the last pandemic, and how you will approach upcoming ones if there's any in the future? And also how you deal with injury and incident reports. This is important because it's happened in every school. A child has fallen, scraped their knee. How does that happen? The parent will receive an incident report. When they pick up their child, they'll see what has happened, how the child was attended to, what the teachers observed, all of this. Did I miss anything? Has anyone else included anything else in this section of their handbook? Or does anyone have any questions? No? All right. If anything comes to mind, feel free to drop it in the comments. Another one that's helpful, I think, especially in the Montessori space, is what to bring and what not to bring. And this can be a checklist or a chart of what you encourage parents to bring, what you expect them to bring, and then what is not allowed at school. So you can list out what items parents should send to school. Things like backpacks. I know some Montessori schools are okay with backpacks. It also depends on the school age. Some say, oh, they don't need a backpack, don't bring a backpack. They don't need that in the primary classroom, etc. I see here, Elizabeth, if evacuation is needed, where students will go. Yep, that's another great one to add. And you can add also information about all of your safety drills that you do at your school. Things like fire drills, right? Depending on where you live, you might have tornado or hurricane drills, how the school deals with that, how often they happen. You can talk about that too. All right. Extra clothing and shoes. What should they bring? How much? Should they bring in a bag labeled? Should they write their child's name on the tags? All of this is important. You can just be very detailed here. Sunscreen. Again, you can say we go outside and maybe you have a summer camp or something like that. Bring your child to sunscreen. We'll write their name on it. And before we go outside, we'll make sure that they have sunscreen. Same with bug spray. If you live in an area that has a lot of mosquitoes, I know this is a problem. Again, medication, what medication, along with proper medication forms. Snack, maybe your school provides a snack. Most Montessori schools do. You can also talk about, if you have a snack list. I know a lot of Montessori schools, they'll have families bring in snacks once every a semester or something like that, and they contribute for that week. You can talk about laundry as well. I know this happens a lot, where laundry might go home with the child and they're expected to bring it back the next day for the classroom. Bedding for naps, how often that needs to be brought in. Every week we send that home on Friday and it needs to be washed and they can bring it back on Monday. Toys, most schools, I'm assuming, strongly are against children bringing toys and gadgets and distractions into the classroom. So you can talk about this and why, because it might be different in some daycares. Some daycares might be okay with children bringing in toys from home, but that's not the case for Montessori. So you can talk about all these things and make a list. Think about every past issue that you've had or any frequently asked question. Yeah, if I left anything out, again, feel free to drop it in the chat. I think it helps because, again, we don't have that luxury of just going along with what parents already know from traditional schooling. We have to kind of let them know about how Montessori is. All right, events and celebrations. What annual events does your school host? You can include dates of special events. Maybe you have some type of winter festival, you celebrate Thanksgiving or a Day of Thanks, any type of celebrations, maybe Mother's, Father's Day events, things like this. How do you celebrate birthday celebrations in your classrooms? I know the school I was at was AMI, so we had the AMI birthday celebration. I know every Montessori school has their way of celebrating these days, but you can talk about, when it's your child's birthday, the parents have the option to come in for the day. We'll do a celebration. They can bring in a snack. This is the kind of snacks that are permitted. So you can talk about that. Fundraisers as well. If you're a nonprofit and you're hosting annual fundraisers, biannual fundraisers, you can talk about, we really encourage our families to take part in our fundraisers. We host them every year. This year it's going to be on this date. It's going to be at this location. So you can let families know so they can prepare in advance. Section 6, the frequently asked questions section. I think this is a really just great section to have because it avoids a lot of parents reaching out to you when you already have so much on your plate for something that can easily be answered quickly. So yeah, this section will just basically avoid parents asking the same questions over and over again to you. You can update this section as questions come. Questions will change. And you can also make sure to reference other parts of the handbook. For instance, if you keep getting the same question about carpool, you can put it in your FAQ and then you can put reference page 10 to see our carpool policies. But you can answer the question that you're hearing the most. And you can just say, oh, we don't allow parking during carpool. Please see our carpool policy on page 10. So this helps immensely. And yeah, I think for this, definitely use bullet points, be concise with your answers, and just grow this list as it comes. But I think it's important to add this section in your handbook. Section 7, parent resources. And this is where it can be your handbook will really become a tool for parents, because while it's great for them to be able to reference your parent handbook to learn information specifically about your school, your policies, it's also great for them to go to it as a source of help when they need parent support. It also just makes it makes your handbook that much more valuable. They'll take care of it and they'll use it a little bit more often. I think it's important to include a whole section on Montessori parenting resources. Here are just some ideas of what you can include in this section. Again, a lot of these we have in our Montessori Thrive collection. So if you're looking to include things like this or lists, you can do that. Also, if you have a virtual copy of your handbook, so obviously, most schools are investing in nicely printed ones. Maybe you put it in a booklet form. But if you're also uploading it online, you can link a bunch of resources that parents can access online for free. So a couple of things that help is maybe a parent reading list. So what books do you recommend for Montessori parents? There's so many great ones out there. I think we have a recommendation list on Thrive for parenting books, reads on positive discipline, what to expect from Montessori, how to parent the Montessori way, all kinds of books that they can access. You can also host like a parenting like book club of sorts. I know some schools do this where they make each community read like a book a year and they can talk about chapter by chapter. Have a little bit of information about each plane of development. Again, this helps parents manage expectations about what they can expect from their child from a specific given time in their development. You know, this works well for those parents who are like, well, why isn't my child playing 3 instruments by now? They should be prodigies. They should know everything. Well, every child is different, and this is what they're interested in right now. These are their sensitive periods. This is what they're drawn to. And from our observations in the classroom, your child is really doing so well in this section or in this area, and you can talk about that. So breaking down planes of development, again, helps to manage expectations and helps parents understand what we're doing. Positive discipline, you can do things like mistaken goal charts. Things like this are helpful so that parents understand what to do in these difficult scenarios that we experience as parents. Montessori parenting mentors and coaches that you recommend. So maybe your school has worked with a parenting coach, a mentor. You have a list of recommendations for those parents who really want to dive deeper into a parenting journey. And you can recommend, if you really want to take a parenting workshop, I have a great contact for you. You can contact. A list of Montessori podcasts. There are so many great ones out there, and they're mostly free. So parents can access this parenting information for free. And this is great for parents who are too busy to read, too busy to watch videos, because they can listen while they're doing their grocery shopping or the school run. So it's great to offer a list of Montessori podcasts that you recommend. Blogs and articles, whether you're writing them, I listed below here your school blog archive, or they're just blogs that you've come across that are great, and articles as well. Parenting course information. If you offer a parenting course at your school, list this out here. Be like, oh, well, we actually offer parenting classes every single year. They're from this day to this day. You can join online. You can come in person, however they run. Or you can watch the recordings. You can list all of this out. Also, goals charts that parents can use in the house. So kind of some infographics here of, is your child having trouble with their bedtime routine? Well, you can fill out this chart with them and develop a routine that works for you. And that way parents can access this information easily. What if scenarios? This is a great one. It can be short. It doesn't have to be more than like a page, but you can be like, oh, these are frequently asked what if scenarios, that parents always come to ask us for advice about, what if, my child is being aggressive or spitting or hitting, what to do in these scenarios. And you can kind of give your advice, and maybe give some supporting resources on how parents can look for help in this area. You can address common parenting challenges again, and just offer some resources and support for each one. And you can also just, like I said earlier, include a school blog archive. Next, how can families and students keep in touch? You can have a section on this if you're interested in nurturing parent and alumni ambassadors in your school. So this is for those families who, are interested in maybe coming back to the school, being an ambassador, giving testimonials, for those alumni who really just did so well in your school and would love to come back and maybe in the future record a video saying, wow, Montessori has helped me. You can talk about if there's a group families can join. You can give the school, do parents give the school permission for the school to send in an email in 5 years' time to check in on them and how Montessori has impacted them 5 years onward. So all of this will help you keep in touch for those important testimonials. It'll help your school community in the future. Also, maybe you allow parents and students to come back and visit your school and your classrooms. If this is something you allow in your community, you can talk about it. You can say, just because you graduate from our program doesn't mean we don't encourage our students to come back and lead the classrooms in the future or volunteer in our community. So you can outline this in your parent handbook. Finally is accessibility. So your parent handbook should be easily accessible at all times. Of course, give your family a physical copy. It helps if it's like a beautiful booklet. Let them know to hold on to it while they're at your school and maybe even in the future, especially if it has parenting resources. And you can also have a PDF version available at your school website because things get lost. Some parents just want to be able to get a question answered quickly on their phone rather than have to wait till they go home and look at the handbook. So it helps to make the document as accessible as possible. Again, ultimately, your parent handbook can be a great tool for families and yourself as a school. I think that's it for my presentation. I just wanted to open it up now to discuss what else to include in your parent handbook, any ideas. I mentioned this throughout the presentation. We have a bunch of resources in the Montessori Thrive collection for those of you who are Montessori Thrive members. We have our parent handbook template. We have Montessori philosophy agreement, parent code of conduct, parenting resources, policy documents, and much more. And also you can always request a resource if you want something added. Just let us know. It's very easy to submit a resource request. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and see if anyone has any questions, ideas. How do you make your parent handbook really stand out and be a valuable asset for your families? I must have covered everything.
You have covered everything. I mean, I can't learn and more, as a matter of fact.
Well, good. I hope you got some good ideas, some new ideas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Lifetime, there's always a challenge in terms of to what extent can you overload a parent with information?
Right.
Because what happens, especially with the short attention span that the parents have these days, how do you get information across without? And that's always a tough one to really figure out. A nice balance.
Yeah, 100%. It not every parent will read every single page of the parent handbook, and that's just being realistic and honest. But it's important to have that information out there because problems do arise. Parents will have questions, and it's always good to reference it.
Yeah. And one of the comments. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's always kind of an evolving document too. And as certain situations and things come up in your school, you're like, oh, we have to add a policy about that to our handbook. And so I think you can look at any school's handbook and see what issues that they've had to deal with in the past. And like, as Camilla said, no one's going to sit down and read it cover to cover, probably, but it is important to have things documented so that when things do come up, you can point to the parent handbook and say, see, this is our policy here. So it's kind of like, it's just almost insurance that you can refer back to if there's any question, that's what would be just written, it's just written down here. This is how we do things. So.
Yeah, the way I see Camilla is, I think pretty much, and Camilla, I think to your comment, the website and the handbook, I mean, the philosophy is the same, because you had mentioned in one of your comments, Camille, that be sure you do not put too much information on the website, because parents will just not read. Maybe have pertinent information they can glance through and get the information out. And the same thing applies to handbook, right? Same idea in that sense, that you have to put enough, but not too much, that they can get the information without their eyes glazing over.
Right. And I mean, you can always structure it where there's maybe a summary or like a quick reference guide at the beginning. But I think the handbook is important to really document your important policies, and you don't want to worry about making it too simplified. If it's a complex, policy that you need to outline, then you need to outline it in the handbook. That's the place for it to be, in my opinion. So Elizabeth, you had a question or a comment?
I do. I was wondering if, I know some schools won't accept future siblings if the 3-year cycle through that kindergarten year, if you only go through kindergarten, they won't accept future siblings if the first sibling doesn't go through that 3-year cycle. And I was wondering if anyone does that, and if that policy then is stated in the handbook, if you should have them sign off on it, that they read and understand, and to the best of their abilities intend to, maintain the cycle.
I know that we had that at our school, and it was written down, and it was part of the partnership agreement in that the parents agreed and understood that it was a 3-year cycle and that their intention was to stay for the full 3 years. And I believe that somewhere in the handbook, it was also stated that if they didn't stay, that the younger siblings would not be admitted to the program. So not sure if we have that verbiage in Thrive at the moment. That's but we can check, and if that's something that you're interested in.
That'd be great. I would love that. Thank you.
My comment to Elizabeth's question is that we have actually thought about this issue quite a bit over the years, and we have deliberately tried to not include in the handbook, primarily because to us, it is more of a kind of a business question, because depending on how healthy your enrollment is, you can make that call, and make it explicit. But let's say there are years when things are tough. We would take people who would not commit to that either. So I don't want to make it a hard and fast rule, but what we do is when we have tours to the parents, with the parents at the school, we do emphasize that is important and all that, and try to coax them into staying for 3 years, but we don't want to make it a hard and fast rule at all times.
Yeah, right. But I think that you can also have the policy sort of, you can have it in your handbook and word it in a way like, if your eldest child does not complete the full year cycle, we reserve the right not to accept your younger sibling. And so you kind of leave the door open to a case-by-case basis there, but they know that, it's a pretty serious offense. So let's just say to pull your child out before 3 years is up, and that, it's frowned upon. And so, but, certainly in certain years, you may have to, for financial reasons, take a younger sibling. But I think, so you can kind of walk the line there a little bit with letting them know that it's frowned upon, but still leaving the door open that you could make an exception in certain cases.
I mean, this just happened to us last week. There was a family who's, I think one of the older child left after 2 years, did not commit to, and they want to bring the younger one in toddler program again this coming year. So the way we said it is that, okay, we are going to put this child on the waiting list, but I need you to understand that we give preference to people, the parents who complete a 3-year cycle. So that's how we approached this situation, in a sense that, okay, we're not committing it. So what happens later on, if things are tough, then we may get them in, but otherwise, I think we have any other option, then we will not. So that's the approach we took.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's great. Yeah. And maybe they'll see the light for 3 years. So
Elizabeth, I'm just linking here the document that we have for our intent to stay for 3 years document on Thrive. Now, it doesn't have anything about the sibling situation, but we can always add a bullet point on that as well. But yeah, I would recommend to add that probably also in the parent agreement. I would say add it to the handbook. add everything to the handbook.
Yeah. There's so much, like I said, that's why I always look at it. It's just kind of a living document, and you're just kind of adding to it and as it goes, because things come up that you don't anticipate, that you'll have to be, referring to policy, and you wish you had it written down. So, but you did cover a lot, Camilla. That was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the lengthiest documents it is probably the lengthiest document you'll give out to parents. So it's important, to go through the information. It's a lot. The recording to this will be posted on our Nido Marketing YouTube channel. So if you want to reference it, It'll also be in our collection along with the presentation slides if you want to use them as a reference point. And yeah, feel free to use our many resources in our collection. If for instance, there's something that you can't find, we're happy to add it. I guess we can add something to the collection in regards to schools taking priority on children who commit to a 3-year program rather than those who pull out at 2 years or have a sibling do that. Yeah, but we're always looking to grow our collection. So if you have any requests, please do send those in. Any other questions, comments, ideas before we head out?
I think one of the most helpful things for the community would be that if we somehow had a master handbook that had kind of everything that Camilla talked about today, and then people could, they can come and customize it especially for these, mostly for people who are starting from ground zero. They don't have a handbook. That would be very beneficial, but not even sure who would volunteer for something like this.
We have one in our collection. I will link it in the chat. I'll send the Montessori Thrive link here. And it's just a template. And it was actually contributed, it was contributed by Hatfield Montessori Preschool. And we've done a couple of editing so that you can kind of make it your own. Obviously, every school has different policies, so it's just a template. You might need to change some of the verbiage, you might need to edit or include some things that are relevant to your own community, but it should work as a template.
Yeah, but that would be a great resource, wouldn't it? Just like a a big, huge, I think it is hard to do because it is different for every school. But just to have an outline even to follow that, that you need to address would be helpful too. So, but
the one that we have, like the parent handbook that we have, it's really good. It has a great table of contents. It pretty much has, I would say, like 95% of everything that we mentioned today and prompts for you to edit. It's already broken down for you. You just have to include obviously your own school's mission, your own core values, things like that. Actually, the core value bullet points and the non-discrimination paragraph I pulled from the template that we have, the parent handbook template. Mm-hmm. So those are all included in the overall like master copy. And you can download it as a Word document, so it's easy to edit.
Yeah.
All right, well, next week we do have a speaker. We're going to be joined by Rupali Sharma. She's going to be sharing a presentation on a search for a child's moral compass, a topic that I think is relevant. So we look forward to that. The registration for that will be open, but I'll go ahead and update the registration page so people can start getting registered. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you there next week, hopefully. We're also looking for a speaker for March 9th. So if you know of anyone who is willing to step up and wants to share on a leadership topic, we were looking for someone to talk about managing, parent misconducts in school communities, how to overcome that, how to have those difficult conversations. But we're open to a variety of different leadership topics. So if there's something that you want to speak about or you want to jump in on, you can contact me. I'll drop my email in the chat here.
Managing misconduct of parents is a very interesting topic. I think the only solution there is to just kind of develop a thick skin.
Yep, it's experience and a lot of hard lessons. Yeah.
Yeah,
but I think it's good to talk about it and to get some ideas,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tricky. All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone who joined, asked questions, and shared their own ideas. I hope this workshop was helpful. We'll be posting this shortly on our YouTube channel. So if you need to check it out later or want to reference it, it'll be available to you. And I hope to see you next week. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.